Hi folks, I'm the Bald Guy, and these are Bald Guy Basics. It is spring of the year, and it's spring of the year you've got to get equipment out, and there are some things that you probably need to do to prepare your equipment for use in the spring, and I'm talking about your yard equipment. I've already done a video of just some basics to look at before you get your lawnmower out, but yesterday I got my string trimmer out, and I realized that there are a lot of differences in string trimmers, particularly if you have a Stihl. I've had different ones over the years, and MTD makes a lot of the equipment that you use, especially if you buy it from a hardware store. Toro, some of the other brands are very often made by a company like MTD, and a lot of that stuff is interchangeable. Stihl is, in my opinion, the better choice to go with, but it offers some unique challenges. So what I want to do is just look at the unit that I'll be using this year. And the nice thing about two-cycle equipment, you never have to change the oil. You just make sure you have proper gas in it. And by the way, if you're worried about gas, I've said this previously, but here in Virginia, we have the ethanol gas. 10% ethanol is at all of the pumps. You have to look for a specialty pump that has non-ethanol gas. And for the longest time, I would not use any ethanol gas in my small engines until I talked to my small engine mechanic, and he said, look, you're paying an extra premium for that non-ethanol gas. He said, I, for years, have used regular 10% ethanol gas in all of my small engines. He said, I just use a quality fuel stabilizer additive. And he said, I've been doing this for years and I've never had the first problem. So I've started to do that. But today, I'm going to give you a little view here. Let me move the camera around and we'll kind of see what we're looking at. And of course, I'm in the shop instead of outside, but let's make a little quick look. All right, you're looking at the power head of my Stihl trimmer, and it's of course set up on the table here. But what we are going to be looking at, the only part of this thing that you're going to be servicing is the string head itself. Now, these are bump advanced string heads, so you have a dual wound fibrous cutting string in there. And you see, I actually replaced this one yesterday, and then I thought, you know, I should do a video on this, because the other side, you look at how frayed this is getting. There's nothing wrong with this, but it has been in there all last summer, so it has changed color tremendously. So I want to set up the camera here where you can actually see this process, because with most other brand string trimmers, what you'll do is press in the bump advance and simply twist your head off and then restring it. That is not exactly how the Stihl works. So let me just walk you through this process here, and for those of you who have a Stihl unit, this will help you to do it more simply. All right, you're not going to see my face in that, but that's probably a good thing. One of the things you're going to need a flathead screwdriver. And I have here what is about a 16 penny nail, or very close to it. I had forgotten, because I have to do the stringing so infrequently, I had forgotten exactly how I had to go about this, and it took me a minute. But I wanted you to see this thing in its dirty shape, because most likely that's the way yours is going to be. And there's a knob, if you're pointed this way, on the left side of your head here, your string head. And what I want you to see, that knob has a nice little hole in it. So what you have inside this hub is a collar, and it has a little groove in it. And what you're going to do is place your nail or anything round like this. Did you see it fall down there? And that locks this in so that you can twist it off, because you're going to twist off the entire head. Remember that these things have left-handed threads, so it feels like you're screwing it in when you're screwing it out. Now, just kind of be careful here before it drops off. Make sure you keep your hand under it, and I'll show you why. This one is better than some of the others that pop out and have a spring that can fly off. There we go. Here's the collar I was talking about. And there's the groove that you're laying that into. That collar, I always like to lay it down just as it came off. That way I won't get confused when I go to put this thing back together and try to flip it over. So I just lay it down like so. Now, the other thing you're going to need is your screwdriver. There are two sides to this thing with the exact same connection, and it's just a plastic collar. I push in the groove, that side comes loose. I push in the groove again, and now I've got it. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab hold of my strings so they don't fly off, because I am going to replace one side here. So your head comes off, and I just lay that down. And I push this thing down because it is spring-loaded, and give it a slight turn. And there we are. Now, what I'm going to do, you see these grooves? There's a couple of grooves here. I'm going to insert my line into this groove and go all the way across with it, trying to keep it from falling out, and I may not be possible here. Okay, and what I want to do, since this is an old one, I'm just going to take this one off so that you can see the process. Stihl does a really good job, and once I pull this off, I'll show you. Right there's my, I was trying to hook it on this side. You need to hook your string on that side. So when you're doing this, we're going to get rid of that. Stihl does a really good job of giving you a really nice, it's molded into the plastic, a nice arrow. I've seen arrows that would be on this thing, and they were just barely inscribed on here, and you can't see them after you use it. But this side is always inside, it's protected, so you know which way to wind your cord. What I recommend, and I'm doing it opposite, but I've messed myself up a little bit. What I recommend is wind the top, well, it'll be bottom here, but wind this side first, the side where your bump advance is, because you have the little grooves to lock in your string, like so. I'll have to hold this one by hand. But there's also a hole inside there, and you simply, I'll use the old one here to show you, you simply, remember which way you're going to wind it. You insert your string and then wind against it, and that holds it in place. But I'm going to put new string on it. I'm using 95.095, and this is not round, this is actually square line, trimmer line. So I find that that cuts a little better, but you just pull against it and you start winding. And I try to be a little bit careful in terms of not tangling myself. Kind of wind it in a uniform way. I don't know if I'm in front of the camera or not here. I use a GoPro for my recording. Sorry, I just said the name of my camera, and it has a voice command feature, so it turned itself off. But it doesn't have, it has a front-facing lens, but I can't always see it. So I've got this roughly the same amount of thread, maybe just a hair more, but that's okay. And I put it into my locking ring. The other thing I have is a pair of lineman's pliers, cutters, so that I can easily, relatively easily, cut this thing off. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to pull this out of my groove. I'm going to put this, the trimmer head back into the base. So we have the base and the inside mechanism, and then the cover. And what I'm going to do, your spring goes right down over your collar. but I simply line up where the holes are, where the string comes out, and make sure they go in there without tangling. Got my finger hung in there. And once you get them in there, you turn it until it locks in place. Make sure your strings are pulled taut. Now this is as easy as it can be. You just push in the tabs and it pops right in place. There, you're done now. Now I did a little turn to make sure that my bump advance is fully extended. And remember, I set this down to remind me. It goes back on here just like so. Now you'll still need your nail, and your nail is going to slide into this thing. And this is the point where I got really messed up yesterday. I forgot that it was left-handed threads. So I slid it on, got my nail in here, and I go to try to screw it in rather than to screw it left-handed. And I fussed and carried on and checked my threads. But once you realize that it's left-handed threads, you don't even have to tighten it up with any real strength. You just snug it up because it's rotating in the other direction. And there you have restrung the advance, your string head with the bump advance. And you're ready to go now, depending on the amount of trimming that you do. You're ready to go for quite some time, and this old thread is not good for anything for me, so it goes in the trash. These things are pretty handy. I've got what I consider the most, I've got bugs that have crawled in here and died, the most advantageous line. They say 3 grades, good, better, and best. I got the basic grade. There was 40 feet in this, and that lasts forever. Here is a .08, and my goodness, I had 400 feet of this. For grass, the smaller line works fine. It will spool out more quickly, so I like the thicker line. This is round line as opposed to the square line. The square line has an edge on it, and I just find it cuts better. The reason I like the heavier line is if you're only cutting grass, this works fine. I've even got some that I think is a bit smaller. All of those are fine. Here, let me put you back up here where you can see me. The smaller line is fine if you're only cutting grass, but I have to do a little bit of edging around some of the mulch beds, and I don't know what the stuff is, but out front, next to the driveway, there's a lamp post, and my wife has this thick, I call it monkey grass. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but every year it'll grow up, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches, something like that every year. Very thick, very green, and then in the fall, it kind of lays down, and you get new growth in the spring. So the best thing to do in the spring is just go cut it down to, less than 1 inch. But the stuff is so doggone thick, the lighter weight threads trimming string, just don't get it done. The reason I bought the Stihl is about twice as expensive, or maybe a third more expensive, half as much. Get it right. I haven't priced them lately, but the last time I checked, the Troy-Bilt type stuff that you'd get at a Lowe's or a HQ or any of those kind of places was pushing $200. The Stihl was, I think, $300. So it's 50% more, or it was when I bought it. And this one's about 4 years old. No, this one's about 6 years old. It's about the same age as my zero turn. When I went to do that monkey grass with the other brands, it was slowing the head down so much. I'm cold down here. It's making my nose run. Excuse me. When I say my nose is running, I'm still recovering from surgery, and I have to wash my sinuses out with these squeeze bottles that runs saline up into my sinuses and out the other side. So you get water drippage, and that's all sorts of fun. When I was using these other heads, and this is my head, it would slow the spin down until it just pushed my string around, and it didn't have enough centrifugal force to keep the string extended. When I went and got the Stihl, never had another problem. So I've got a unit with enough power, and even though I say it's got a tremendous amount of power, another difference that I noticed, I actually thought something was wrong with these, because this one develops its power at relatively low RPMs. So in some of the other weed whackers or weed eaters, we call them, string trimmers, you'll hear, I don't know what the RPMs are, but you'll hear the things like really spool up and wee, get a pretty good number of RPMs. This one is more like, and I thought that the carburetor was out of adjustment, and the guy at the shop said, he laughed at me and said, no. He said, but don't let it fool you, because it's geared in such a way you have a tremendous amount of power as well as speed down here. My point in all this, these things will throw debris everywhere. Do not weed eat with one of these near a vehicle. You'll burst out a vehicle window. And do not, and I mean this, do not do it without, if you don't wear glasses, make sure you're wearing safety glasses, because little pebbles, sticks, and debris, they'll fly up everywhere. And, they'll hit my face and stuff, and that's fine. I've never had one to make me bleed. But if they hit you in the eye, you'll damage or lose an eye. So always use that safety equipment. And if you're not familiar with these, if you're worried about, if you've never done this before and you're looking at, well, how much string should I let out? The bump advance will let out more string than you need. But right here, and it's kind of covered up in grass, but right there is a sharp edge that most all of your trimmers have. So when this thing extends out and it's too long, it'll fly around and catch that edge, and it trims itself. So you have a self-adjusting feature on these. So all you have to do now is to make sure you've got fresh gas in these things and go to town. That's another thing I love about quality equipment. I've got some equipment that you have to be very careful. It's a little bit persnickety in that you let the gas get a little age on it, and it's really hard to crank. And I have noticed over the years, I've had home light chainsaws, which did really well. I've had, my dad gave me a Poland chainsaw when his health deteriorated and he couldn't run it anymore. And that one can be a little persnickety. So what I'm saying is the lower end equipment can cause you a little more trouble with gas that isn't as fresh as it could be or should be. So be sure that you use that stabilizer. It will save you a lot of problems. And be sure to hit the like button. Be sure and hit the subscribe button. I hope you'll share these videos with others. But these are videos to help people who've never had to do it before to know how to do it for themselves, so they don't have to pay somebody else to do it. So hope this helps, and we will see you on the next video. I am the Bald Guy, and these are Bald Guy Basics.